What's up, YouTube? You might be wondering, what does the title of my video mean? Well, to understand, we first have to travel back to my middle and high school years. Throughout my years in middle and high school, I didn't have a lot of curiosity in me and overall I hated learning. I was curious and enjoyed a couple subjects and topics like history, politics, and news/slash current events. These subjects were easy for me, and I always enjoyed the stories, the narratives, the causes, and the effects, and the people that were involved. I could easily recall different facts like major battles fought during World War II. In retrospect, I call this phase of my middle and high school years my mindless zombie era because I did no real thinking, writing, reflecting, and I just sought pleasure and didn't do any learning of some form in my free time. If TikTok was a thing back when I was still in school, my brain would have been absolutely fried. I also call it my mindless zombie years because I didn't have self-awareness. I didn't think about my actions and the effect on those around me. I didn't think of the consequences of my actions no matter what I did. Instead of spending my time wisely, I watched so many fucking shows and movies during these years. I caught up to One Piece in a couple months, man. Imagine that. At this point, I didn't read any books, and I kind of found it really strange that people would spend their free time reading. Everything I was feeding my brain, all of the fucking inputs was entertainment, slop, useless shit, porn, etc. It was garbage in and garbage out. I was the ultimate fucking consumer of bullshit. I could have watched videos on Bitcoin, but instead, I was watching fucking Smallville, which has like 9 fucking seasons, man. I even watched the fucking Arrowverse shows on CW. It was such a pathetic waste of time. As I age and look back, that's one regret I will have for the rest of my life. Watching bullshit, low quality, and poorly written shows. One day during the middle of my junior year of high school, one of my friends asked if I wanted to smoke weed out of the blue. This was my first time being asked to smoke, and I remember thinking, you know, I'm in high school. I need to experience shit like this, like everyone else. Better now than later. So I agreed and thought, what harm can it do? I've only up to that point heard weed wasn't bad for you, like alcohol, and you'll be fine the next day. So me and my friend, we each picked up a gram for like $10 each, and we smoked in his car while he drove around. I'm telling you, man, it was a great first experience. I will always cherish that first fucking hit, man. It was amazing. After this, I started smoking more and more, and it became a regular occurrence. I would have smoke sessions after school, and it was just fucking great. I have so many memories from those after school smoke sessions. Something interesting started to occur when I was at home, high out of my mind after a smoke sesh. I would look through YouTube, looking for what to watch. And I started to watch videos that make you think. My YouTube watching habits just started to change as time went on and as I kept smoking. I started watching videos on philosophy, psychology, economics, technology, literary analysis videos, things I wouldn't watch, before I smoked weed. The type of content I was engaging in was changing dramatically. I would usually watch gameplays, vlogs, pranks, and a bunch of entertainment slop. At the same time, I started having those high thoughts more and more as I smoked. An example of a high thought would be like, damn, we're just fucking monkeys on a huge ball traveling through outer space at like 60,000 miles per hour. Or, I remember looking at my parents this one night and thinking, damn, somehow these two people met and made me. And for some reason, I just started questioning their existence. I also experienced a lot of paranoid thoughts, and I started to question my own existence, my life, my reality. Why does this happen? Or how did that come to be? More and more, I started becoming curious in general. So I started wanting to know what the meaning of our lives is. How did humanity reach this point? How did money come about? How do markets function? And how the internet works, etc. So, in my title, when I said weed was the activation energy, what I mean is weed was the activation energy to my intense curiosity that I have today. So, activation energy in chemistry is the minimum amount of energy that must be delivered to some chemical system to initiate a reaction, breaking the bonds so that new ones form. Every chemical reaction has a minimum amount of activation energy needed, like for the Coke and Mentos experiment. To get that exploding effect, you need to drop a certain amount of Mentos in there for the explosion of the Coke to occur. Activation energy is needed for everything from, getting up in the mornings to the American Revolution. It's the ingredient that starts the reaction and breaks apart the current state of things and transforms it into something new. It's breaking the status quo. So, weed was my activation energy. It turned me from a mindless zombie that didn't think, reflect, question, and inquire and explore ideas about reality and different phenomenon, etc., to, deeply curious and obsessed about learning, acquiring knowledge in different topics, and understanding and analyzing certain ideas. Who knew a quarter of weed, which is what, like 7 blunts, would eventually cause this sort of reaction and awaken the curiosity inside me? There's a growing trend I see on X, formerly Twitter, about people reversing their support on widespread legalization of weed and how they now think it's harmful to people and to our society as a whole. I do agree in some aspects, but I will always be grateful for what it has done for me. It will always have a special place in my heart. Now, what do I mean by Joe Rogan was the catalyst? Well, one day after a long smoke session with my friends, I was doing what I usually do, scrolling through YouTube, and I eventually came across the JRE. At this time, Joe wasn't as mainstream as he is now. This was when he was still living in Cali at the time. So I started watching his podcast and fell in love with it. I thought the things that were being discussed on the podcast was so interesting and wide ranging because, I never heard the people around me and the people I spend time with talk about stuff like this. I never heard people talk about many things like this for such a long ass time. It just blew my fucking mind. Imagine being high as fuck and listening to Joe talk about different conspiracies you didn't even know was a thing. I loved the podcast so much that I tried to imitate Joe. I'm not going to lie, I tried to imitate him. So, whenever I was in conversation with someone else, I would try to, sound smart by, by just repeating what they said on that podcast. And I would always try to bring up the topics they discuss and basically have, my own podcast style conversations with others, to be seen as interesting and knowledgeable. I would always repeat Joe and his guest opinions and the things they said or discussed. And I believed everything they were saying was factual. I'm going to be honest. I'm sure I'm not the only one that kind of went through this phase. In one podcast, I forgot which one, but Joe talked about this book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield and how he recommends it and gives it away to lots of people. And he was just praising it. So I went to my local Barnes and Nobles the next day and picked up that book along with others that were recommended by him or his guests. I eventually started buying more books and reading more and more. And I didn't watch Joe as religiously as I did. And let me tell you, I absolutely fell in love with reading. I rather read what the expert guests were saying on his podcast for myself than, just hearing them talk about it. So when I say Joe Rogan was the catalyst, he was the catalyst for bringing my curiosity to another level by reading books, writing, and going deep into topics that I was interested in. A catalyst is something that accelerates change. They can't make the reaction occur that would, normally not, but they reduce the time required for change to occur significantly. So, an example would be that getting fired would be a catalyst for success, or getting that promotion you've always wanted and that you eventually got led you to getting fired because you got complacent and lazy. So Joe was the catalyst to me picking up the habit of reading and discovering my curiosity and love for learning. To this present day, one of my main hobbies and what I spend a lot of time doing is, just reading books. I don't smoke or watch much of Joe Rogan anymore, but that weed and Joe Rogan combination awakened that, side of me that was dormant. And I have so much gratitude for that. Lastly, I have to say it might have happened sooner or later, or it might have happened anyway. But shout out to my friend who out of the blue asked me to smoke that day. Earlier in the video, I talked about the regrets I had in the video. And one regret I don't have is, I'm thankful to my younger self for saying yes that day. And that's one decision I will never forget or regret. So, let me know in the comments if you guys have some catalyst or activation energy that, drastically changed your life for the better or for the worse. Thank you. Peace.